So we are very, very pleased to have tonight Anita, which is a member for a long time, and she is a life coach. And she will be presenting today, and I will let her explain what it is, but something about how to really feel better in your life.
Well, first of all, let me thank you all for coming. I see so many familiar faces and maybe some less familiar faces here, and it's really wonderful that you're all here. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank Amel and Beverly for calling me in here and giving me the opportunity to present here for you today. Appreciative living. It's really good. So, what is appreciative living? Appreciative living is basically a paradigm shift. It's a different way of seeing things and being. Before I start now, I'd like you to take your little handouts that you have. And I'd like you to all write down one situation or person that you're dealing with right now and that you have difficulties, that you are struggling. A situation or a person. So take a few minutes to write that down, and then I'd like you to please share your little story. And tonight is going to be all about stories. And share your story with your neighbor.
All right. So, how can we appreciate what is? I know we do it every now and then, but how can we do it more consistently? To illustrate that, I'm going to take you to the movies. Now, think about the times when you are at a movie that is really happy, has a happy ending, it's uplifting. How do you come out of the movie theater afterwards? Happy, good mood, inspired, whatever, uplifted, right? So what happens when you watch a depressing movie, a sad movie? Exactly. So it is with our lives. Now I'd like you to watch a very special movie. Why don't you close your eyes for a moment? Are you sitting comfortably? Imagine you're sitting in a movie theater and you're watching a movie. And you're watching the movie of your life. And as you sit there, you notice there is a vertical line going down in the middle of the screen. And on one side of that line, you see all the things that are negative, that are the problems, the things that are missing, the unpleasant things in your life. On the other side of the line, you see all that's positive, that's pleasant, that's life-giving, that's inspiring. Now you also notice there are curtains on each side of the screen. But the curtains, unfortunately, are not tucked away neatly to the side, but they're drawn somewhere across the screen. Now, some people have their curtain drawn all across the negative part. That's not very helpful, because that's called denial. Most of us, though, I think, have their curtains drawn sort of halfway across all the positive side. Where is your curtain? What are your stories? What do you see? And so appreciative living is basically about keeping the curtains wide open on both sides to see the whole story. And all the stories that come up. Who knows the story about, I'm not good enough, I'm not worth it, I can't do that? Anybody? Anybody ever been there? Mm-hmm. So, what proof do you have for that? What makes you believe that? Why don't you think back to times in your life when you were more than good enough, where you really contributed positively to a situation, where you did things that you never thought ever possible. Think about it. And how much do you still believe it then? How much do you still believe you're not good enough? Sometimes we make up all kinds of stories. And there's another story. It's called blame. We're a bit conditioned by our upbringing and by our society, but there's always somebody to blame for our behavior, the way we act. Like our parents. Some of those parents screwed us up. Not any present. Yeah. But our culture, a teacher said that traumatized us for the rest of our lives, and now, of course, we can never write well, or something like that. Our genes. So when are we going to take responsibility for our actions and for our lives? You know, we all inherited one of those DVDs that says there is somebody else or something to blame. But it is our choice whether we want to put that DVD in the player and watch it over and over again. The choice is ours. Now, of course, there are moments in our lives that are really difficult. Like a major setback at work, the loss of a loved one. Of course, you have to deal with these situations. You have to go through the stages of grief. Anybody knows Elizabeth Kubler-Ross? And you know the stages of grief. The first one, very simplified, denial. You don't want to believe that person is gone. You don't want to believe that job just slipped away. And then you get into anger. And anger is good because that means you're processing. You're moving on. And then there is a phase of exploration. What can I do to get out of this stage? And finally, acceptance. You know, I met a woman not too long ago. And I really admired her because she was so well put together. She was very positive. She was very upbeat and just a joy to be with. And it wasn't until toward the end of the conversation that she told me that she had lost her daughter 5 years earlier. I'm a mother too, and for me, there is absolutely nothing worse in life for a mother than to lose your child. But this woman, quite obviously, had managed to get through those stages. And she had managed to come out on the other end. She had managed to find ways to take care of herself again and take care of her loved ones and be able to move on. And I'm sure there are many moments in her life that she still mourns her child, but she is moving on. I also happen to know another woman. It is very sad because she also lost her child 10 years ago. But that woman is still in the denial phase. And that's hard. And I don't know whether she'll ever come out of it. So those are those moments that we have to honor, of course. We have to look at both sides, the positive and the negative. And the negative is also important because it prevents us from doing stupid things, right? Like running across the street without looking, being run over by a car, or starting a business without knowing squat about it, or surrounding ourselves with negative people. We have to identify them because they're bad for us. So, you know, it is really important to look at all these sides. Now, I don't know about you, but I know a few people who know really to keep their curtains wide open at all times. I'm sure many of you know the author of this book, Viktor Frankl. Ever heard of him? He was an Austrian psychiatrist, and he lived during the Second World War. He's Jewish. And he had a choice at one point whether to go and with his parents to the concentration camp or to the US, where he already had a visa to live there and work there. Well, guess what he did? He chose the concentration camp. And he managed there to not only inspire himself to find meaning in his life and to find the good in even his captors and in the situation that he was in, but he inspired many others to do the same, and that way, spiritually and physically, survive the concentration camp. Or the person that Jackie interviewed, older man who was taking care of his dying wife, dying of cancer. And she interviewed him, and you would think that somebody like that would be very unhappy and sad. His wife is dying, you know? I mean, what could be worse? And yet, she came away inspired, because only thing I talked about is all the good years he had with his wife, and that he had now the opportunity to take care of her and to be with her till her dying moments. So, you see, there are always two different ways of looking at any given situation. There's always a brighter side to every story. So I would like to invite you to write down a person that you know, that you admire for also being able to keep his or her curtain wide open. And that person can be you, because it can so happen that you at times in your life had a situation where you managed yourself to look at the brighter side of the story. Okay, so now the question is, how can we become people like that if we're not already? It's difficult because, through evolution, we have in our upbringing in society, we have been trained to always look at the dangers first, right? Because otherwise we might not be here right now, because we had to look out for the saber-tooth and the tigers and the fires and the enemies and all that. Well, luckily our world is a little less violent and less dangerous, at least on that part. We have now the luxury to think a bit differently. Now, but our brains have been a little bit hardwired throughout our upbringing, to look at the dangers and the negative sides first. But now here is the good news. Our brain is not static. Our brain is like a muscle. Our brain is actually like, this piece of Play-Doh here. We can move it. We can create new pathways. Takes a little exercise, but we can change. We can change through consistent new ways of thinking. We can create new neural pathways in our brain, and in the end become more appreciative and hopefully also more happy people who can learn to look at situations in a different way. So now I got my hands all dirty. That was very good. Thank you. Very good. But I guess you get the picture, right? We don't have to stay the way we are. We don't have to stick with the way of thinking that we've always done. So, but how do we do this now? How do we see? How can we learn how to create these new pathways? Now, it's like going to the gym. Our brain is like a muscle, like any other muscle in the body. And when we take it to the gym, we work it out and we strengthen it. And it's the same with our brain. So we have to have exercises, right? And as I said, I'm the physical therapist. I'm going to give you some exercises now that help you get your brain strong like that. So the first exercise that I thought was tremendously helpful. No, actually, I think before we do that, I am going to ask you now to go back to the situation that you described earlier, the difficult situation that you described earlier, or the person, and try to see what good can you find in that situation. And you can see on your handout there are a couple of questions. It's your choice which questions you want to answer. What can you learn? What can you learn from that person? What are the qualities in that person? Or what is good in that situation? And I'm going to pass around here some little cards. That's my gift to you, that you can keep to be reminded always that there's always a different side, a brighter side to your story. And question your story, whatever situation you're in. So if you could please pass these around. And keep one for yourself. Okay, well, as I said, as I promised, I will give you some home exercises that can help you, that I actually guarantee, if you do them, help you to get your muscle, your brain muscle, in the shape that you want it to be. And the very first one, and for me it was the most powerful one, and you've heard it before, I'm sure. But how often and how consistently do we do it? It's called a gratitude list, right? And so I'd like you to, at least for a month, better yet for 2, every single day. And it doesn't matter whether you do it in the morning or in the evening or at midnight. But pick a time and stick to it. If you always do it in the morning, do it in the morning. Evening, whatsoever. And find 3 things that you're grateful for. And really, it doesn't matter how big or small they are. You can be grateful for your warm bed. Or you can be grateful for having found the love of your life. It doesn't matter. And if you repeat a few, it does. Every day. Every day. And if you repeat a few, it doesn't matter. And if you're like me, and I don't know, after about 4 or 5 days, I started seeing good things everywhere, just like that lady. I'm sitting in a car and I'm stuck in traffic, and suddenly I have beauty everywhere, and I see things, or I think about things that I'm grateful for. One classic is the one that I'm standing in the grocery store at Carrefour. And you know how it is sometimes when there are about 20 people lining up. And are we opening another cash register? No, we don't. So the line is really long. That gives me really a good chance to look around. And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, oh, I'm grateful I can buy all these things if I want. Right? And why was I thinking that? I'll go back and tell you a quick story. My father was born in West End, East Germany. He was smart. He made it over to the West. His brothers weren't so successful. But one time, about 20 years later, one of my uncles was allowed out into the West on the occasion of some family celebration. And he went with my father to the grocery store. And his jaw just about dropped. He asked my father, "Can you buy all this?" I said, my father said, "Of course, why else would it be there?" He says, "Yeah, we see this in the East. We see West television. But our party tells us that it is all just propaganda. These boxes are empty and the sausages, they're out of plastic." No kidding. And so I was reminded of how my relatives, 500 kilometers to the east, when they wanted to buy a stinky little piece of gray sausage, they had to stand in line for half an hour, and sometimes to get there and not even have it. So these are the little stories that have come up over time as I was doing these exercises. And I will tell you that over time, my overall spirit lifted. Because every time I was doing my exercises or anything popped up, immediately my level of energy went up. So give it a try for about a month or two, and let me hear about it and see what happens to you. So the second exercise is the one that we just did earlier, just now. Try to get into the habit that every time you encounter a situation that is unpleasant for you or makes you unhappy, try to see whether there is something good in it. What is good, what is good, what is good. I'll tell you another story. I'm quite a storyteller, am I not? I love to run. I used to love to run, at least. So last year, in August, I was preparing for the 20K of Brussels this May. And it was August, and I was so proud of myself because I was already at 12K, almost no sweat. Problem was, I was running in a forest, and as you know, there are all these roots running around. I tripped, I twisted my ankle really bad, and pulled my Achilles tendon to boot. So I was out of commission, and it really hurt. My concern was, though, my immediate concern was, I had promised my mother to come and visit her in southern Germany. And I was worried that I wouldn't make it down, but I did. So the car was fine, you know, I could push that gas pedal, no problem, no problem. But what I normally do when I visit my mother is I have breakfast with her, and then I run off by foot to run my errands, visit my friends, do some shopping, and I come back and I have lunch with her, and then I run out again, you know, do my errands, visit friends, and go shopping. And so I do this for 3 days, and I spend time with my mother, no? Yeah, she should be happy that I was there. Oh well. This time was different. Obviously, I couldn't do any running around by foot. So I had breakfast with her, and then we sat and talked. And then I had lunch with her, and then we sat and talked some more. And that was incredible because for the first time, I really listened to her stories, the stories of her life, that I had never really taken the time before to really sit and listen. And I connected with my mother like I have never connected before. And it was all thanks to that stupid foot, which I was cursing I was driving home, but I was also very, very grateful for the situation because this was a unique moment in my life and in the life of my mother to really connect. So that was the second exercise. And there is one more. It's something that's more wishy-washy. You can do that at any given time of the day. Watch your positive to negative thought ratio. I wish I had known about that when I was a young mother. And you know how it is. Your kids, your loved ones, they leave their socks everywhere, they behave, they pick their nose and all this stuff, and you make a comment about it. And so by the end of the day, you have reprimanded them maybe 20 times and given them one pat on the back. And that's how we were probably conditioned as well, right? And so we carry it on from generation to generation. What if you catch them doing something right? Every time they do something well, point it out to them. Thank you. Thank you for picking up your socks. Thank you. Anything, the smallest, the tiniest thing, pay attention to it and communicate that to that person. And do the same with yourself. Rather than saying, oh, how stupid, I made the double photocopy. How stupid of me, you know? I say, okay, let's get past that and move on, and let's see, maybe there is anything that I did good today, right? So do that with yourselves and with others. And treat yourself to more positive thoughts than negative ones. So that just about concludes the first part of the 3 pillars and the secrets of appreciative living. Now, the second part is called imagining the ideal. In appreciative inquiry facilitation, we have a motto. And that motto is, what we give attention to grows. What we give attention to grows. So, paying attention, if we pay attention to all that's negative, what's missing in our lives, what is not so good, the more we get ourselves into some kind of mental rut. And it's very hard to get out of it, right? So imagine you wake up in the morning and you think about the contract that you might have lost yesterday, the conflict that you had with your coworker or with your partner, and all the obnoxious things that you have to do today. What happens to your mood as you're lying there in bed? How's your energy level? Do you even want to get out of bed? No, I don't. I tell you that much. And it's scientifically proven that constant negative thought actually affects our cell memories. And our cell memories are responsible for our immune system. Let's say you're in bed in the morning, again, and you think about all the things that went well yesterday. And you think about why they went well. You spend some time on that. And you think about what you're grateful for. You can already make your list before you even get out of bed. And you think about all the wonderful things that you want to achieve that day, that you want to work toward to. Imagine, what if we controlled our way of thinking, if we got away from thinking all these negative thoughts, and instead think about what we want more of in our lives. What do we want more of? What do we want to achieve? And if we spend all day just thinking about these things, it's called something like visualization. I'm sure you've all heard about that, right? If we focus, if we don't lose sight of our goals, and if you really keep thinking, leave those negative thoughts aside and focus only every day on where you want to go. Because obstacles appear only when you lose sight of your goal. The last step is, as you see here, acting in alignment. Of course, now our wonderful plans, they're nothing but daydreams if we don't take actions. And that's probably easier said than done. But here I'm going to give you a little tip. Because what's very important in defining our actions is the language that we're using. So now imagine, let's just take the example, I want to be healthier, right? I want to feel better, healthier, and so on and so forth. Well, you can say, to do that, I need to stop eating junk food. Well, what are the chances of you actually following through on that? So the trick here is to ask yourself a so-called appreciative question. Now, what the heck is an appreciative question? The appreciative question, very simple. It is a question that takes us to a better place than we are right now. Let me illustrate that. Let's take our example again. We can say, I have to stop eating junk food. But here is the appreciative question that you can ask yourself. What can I eat today? Or what can I do today that will leave me feeling healthy and full of energy? Think about it. What can I do and what can I eat today that will leave me healthy and full of energy? Are we ready to move on? Yeah. Okay. Now, obviously, this is probably a very hard exercise, and it's something that requires practice. But you now know it, and you can try, how to phrase that. For instance, if you want a better relationship with your partner, what can I do to have a better relationship with my partner? What are the actions I can take? So first thing is that you are clear about the purpose of why you want to achieve what you want to achieve. And then when you see the rationale behind it, it's easier to follow through with your actions. We are really like children. And you explain to a child why there are certain things, as of a certain age, then they're more bound to actually follow through, right? So that was pretty much all for tonight. And I know it was a lot of material. And that's why we did some of the exercises, and you can take these sheets home with you. And before I end, I have 2 more things. One is every day I have the choice whether I want to be happy or not. I thought that was very powerful. We all go through our ups and downs, and even I have to work on this every day, more or less, a little less so than before, but yeah, there are moments where you have a slump. And when I read that, I said, wow, this is a comment that I will incorporate into my life. And then I added another one for myself, and I said to myself, and only good things will happen to me today. And I believe that. And ever since I believe that, it is true. A lot of good things happen. I don't know how it works. They say there is something called the law of attraction, but I don't know. Anyway, I believe it, and it's true. It's really true. So anyway, that I wanted to give you.
So now, enjoy. It's time for the people that still want to stay, you can enjoy it. I'm really, really thanks Anita for presenting this, because I think that's giving you a lot of clues to a little bit appreciate a little bit better or living.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.